median reported potency of regulated weed in California has been steadily dropping over the past 6 months, according to a report from Bay Area news source SFGate. The drop in potency, which includes a decline of 7% in just the past 3 months, coincides with the recent implementation of new state regulations governing how the potency of cannabis flower is determined by testing labs in the state. According to information from cannabis market data analytics firm Headset shared with SFGate, the median potency of cannabis flower tested in California was 30.7% in December. The data, which is based on more than 90,000 potency test results from the state, also shows that the median potency for cannabis flower had declined to about 28.5% by March 1st, a decrease of about 7% in just 3 months. Reported cannabis potency has long been a point of contention in California's cannabis industry. Cannabis flower that shows higher levels of THC in lab testing results is more desirable to many consumers and thus more valuable. As a result, reported median cannabis potency levels have steadily risen in California, with some retail offerings listing THC potency exceeding 30% or even higher in some cases. The drop in the median potency of California came as new regulations for a standardized cannabinoids test method and standardized operating procedures for the testing of dried cannabis flower and non-infused pre-rolls were implemented in the state in January. The rules were adopted by the California Department of Cannabis Control in 2022 after legislation mandating the regulations was passed by state lawmakers the year before. Nearly 24 attorneys general from across the country wrote a letter to congressional leaders this week, urging them to enact legislation to federally regulate intoxicating hemp products. In the letter, the top law enforcement official from 21 states wrote that the legalization of hemp with the 2018 Farm Bill has resulted in the proliferation of intoxicating hemp products across the nation and challenges to the ability for states and localities to respond to the resulting health and safety crisis. The letter, dated March 20th, was addressed to the committee chair and ranking minority members of the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, and the House Committee on Agriculture. The correspondence was led by Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita and Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin, both Republicans, and co-signed by the Attorneys General of 19 additional states, including Democrats and Republicans. In their letter, the state officials call on the leaders in Congress to address the glaring vagueness created in the 2018 Farm Bill. The legislation has led to the proliferation of products containing psychoactive novel and minor cannabinoids that can be derived from hemp, including Delta-8 THC, THCA, HHC, and others. The German government last week adopted a bill to end the prohibition of cannabis for adults that will make possession and home cultivation of weed legal in Europe's most populous nation as of April 1st. The legislation, which also allows for the establishment of cannabis clubs, was given final approval on Friday in the Bundesrat, Germany's legislative chamber representing the country's 16 federal states. The bill has already been approved by the second chamber of parliament known as the Bundestag, which voted to pass the legislation late last month. Under the limited legalization bill known as CANG, adults aged 18 and up will be permitted to possess up to 25 grams of marijuana and store up to 50 grams of weed at home beginning on April 1st. The measure also permits adults to grow as many as 3 cannabis plants at their residences. On July 1st, Germany's weed legalization plan will begin permitting non-commercial cannabis clubs, where members will have access to legally cultivated marijuana. Each cannabis club will be limited to no more than 500 members. The legislation does not include provisions that allow for profit recreational marijuana producers or retailers. Regulated marijuana sales in the United States are expected to exceed $31 billion this year, according to a recent economic forecast from a firm specializing in cannabis and hemp business consulting, data, and economic research. The projection from Portland, Oregon-based Whitney Economics estimates that legal sales of medical marijuana and adult-use cannabis will total $31.40 in 2024. The forecasted amount is an increase of $2.6 billion from 2023, representing a growth rate of 9.14% year over year. The projection notes that legal sales of cannabis have been suppressed since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, citing changes in consumer purchasing power, higher interest rates, and delayed implementation of regulations in new markets as challenges facing the industry. Despite these factors, overall cannabis growth has remained positive. Legal cannabis sales declined in 10 states, however, an indication that new markets are needed for the industry to continue to grow. Monday was not a good day for billionaire Sean Diddy Combs, once one of the most highly respected producers in hip-hop and one of the most successful black entrepreneurs to enter the game, as feds from multiple agencies raided two of his homes in Los Angeles and Miami. Two of Diddy's homes were raided as part of a federal investigation led by the Southern District of New York into alleged human trafficking. Homeland security officers from at least 3 locations took part in the raid, as well as other law enforcement members. Earlier today, Homeland Security Investigations New York executed law enforcement actions as part of an ongoing investigation, with assistance from Homeland Security Investigations Los Angeles, Homeland Security Investigations Miami, and our local law enforcement partners, the spokesperson said. We will provide further information as it becomes available. Diddy's lavish $40 million home in Holmby Hills in Los Angeles was raided. Aerial footage from KTLA in Los Angeles showed multiple SWAT vehicles descending on his house. It boasts 17,000 square feet and has a 3,000 square foot guest house, and Los Angeles Times reported that it has a theater, a gym, a wine room, and an underwater swimming tunnel connecting to an underground grotto. His other home, Emilio and Gloria Estefan's former home on Star Island in Miami Beach, Florida, worth $35 million, was also raided. Combs, 54, was in the Miami area when the raids were taking place. According to law enforcement agents who obtained a warrant for his arrest, investigators seized the phones of Combs as he was scheduled to depart for a vacay to the Bahamas. In December 2023, a lawsuit was filed against Combs by a Canadian woman identified only as Jane Doe, who says she was sex trafficked and gang raped in 2003 when she was 17 and in the 11th grade. She says 2 of her associates were also victims, and she is accusing him of running a sex trafficking scheme. The New York State Cannabis Control Board recently voted to waive cannabis cultivator licensing fees for the next 2 years. Government Kathy Hochul celebrated this recent progress to help struggling cultivators. Farmers are the backbone of our state, and we're making sure the family farms across New York that are building our cannabis industry have a real chance to succeed, Hochul said. I have made it clear that New York State needs to issue more dispensary licenses and kickstart cannabis sales in New York, and this 2-year promise to adult-use conditional cultivators will make sure these farmers can reap the benefits of this growing industry. On the same day, the CCB also approved 114 new cannabis business licenses, 45 for retail dispensaries and 31 microbusinesses, which allows the grantees to grow, process, and sell cannabis. The state currently has 89 licensed dispensaries currently operating, and hundreds more licenses that have been granted, with 223 approved in 2024. Additionally, the Cannabis Control Board approved 38 non-conditional adult use licenses as well. Until 2026, cultivators will no longer have to pay for the fee that is applied when they transition to a non-conditional license, such as cultivation or microbusiness licenses. Conditional license fees range anywhere between $4,500 to $40,000, and the price is based on their license tier size and canopy size, according to a press release published by Hochul's office. A majority of cannabis flower products purchased at licensed retail pot shops in Colorado contained less THC than indicated on the label, according to a study performed by a researcher at the University of Colorado Boulder. The study showed that THC levels indicated on the label of approximately 70% of products tested were at least 15% higher than those reported by a third-party lab after purchase. The research was conducted by Anna Schwab, an associate lecture professor of modern cannabis science at the University of Colorado Boulder. To complete the study, Schwab collected 23 cannabis flower samples from 10 licensed dispensaries located across the northern Colorado Front Range, which includes the cities of Denver, Fort Collins, and Garden City. The samples represented 12 different cannabis strains, including sativas, indicas, and hybrids, with different THC potency levels reported on the product packaging. Some THC potency levels were reported as a range from 12.8% to 19.3% on the lower end and 28.07% to 31.28% on the higher limit, while others were reported as a single value, such as 16.4% or 17.4%. A comparison of lab testing results revealed that approximately 70% of the samples had reported THC levels that were at least 15% higher than the levels determined by the independent laboratory. Among the 23 flower samples analyzed, 18 displayed lower THC levels than reported, with 16 falling below 15% of the stated value, 13 falling below 30% of the reported THC, and 3 samples falling below half of the reported THC. Schwab wrote in a report about the research, published by nonprofit news source The Conversation. Regulated sales of marijuana in Arizona topped $1.4 billion last year, according to state data, marking the third year in a row that licensed weed sales have exceeded $1 billion in the Grand Canyon state. Sales of recreational marijuana totaled more than $1 billion in 2023, while sales of medical cannabis brought in nearly $350 million, the Arizona Mirror reported on Tuesday. Arizona's continued strong weed sales were welcome news for the state's licensed cannabis businesses. Luke Flood, Senior Vice President and West Regional Leader for multi-state operator Curaleaf, said, "Arizona has been a strong success story for us and has become one of the top markets in the country for Curaleaf." Thinking back just 10 years ago, the previous U.S. cannabis landscape stood in stark contrast to the one we enjoy today. The United States currently has 38 states with legal medical or recreational cannabis, with 74% of Americans living in a legal cannabis state and 79% living in a county with at least one cannabis dispensary. With nearly 15,000 dispensaries throughout the nation, retail cannabis stores now outnumber the roughly 13,500 McDonald's locations in the country. Given the prevalence of legal cannabis throughout the nation, and as reform becomes a prominent political talking point among state lawmakers and even in the executive branch, it's perhaps unsurprising that American attitudes surrounding cannabis legalization have become overwhelmingly supportive over the years. Pew Research Center has consistently monitored this progression, with its most recent report affirming that U.S. citizens are indeed incredibly supportive of legal cannabis.